Alright, so we're basically halfway through 2026, and honestly, PC gaming has been eating really well. Like, absurdly well. We've gotten sequels to stuff we've been waiting on for years. A bunch of weird indies that came out of nowhere and stole our entire weekend, and a few heavy hitters that actually lived up to the hype. So I figured, let's run through the 15 best PC games of 2026 so far. This is not a definitive ranking or whatever, just the stuff that's actually worth your time and money. Hi folks, welcome to CryptoMac, and today we're counting down the 15 best PC games of 2026 that have dropped so far. Starting off this list, we have Far Far West, and look, I was not expecting much from this one. A co-op horde shooter with cowboys and monsters? Sure, whatever. But then it launched in early access on April 28th and immediately grabbed like 96% positive reviews on Steam with over 19,000 ratings. That is not an accident. You've got 1 to 4 players running around at the spooky west, blasting monsters, slinging spells, completing missions, collecting bounties. The visuals have this cartoony flair that's more charming than silly, and the progression line keeps things from getting stale way longer than you'd expect. People are already comparing it to Deep Rock Galactic and Helldivers 2, which is not a comparison I make lightly. It's still in early access, there's some lag here and there, but for a game that cost me $20, the value is kind of insane. The community's only real complaint right now is that there's no dedicated button to just yell yeehaw, which honestly, fair, that should be a priority patch. If you've got 3 friends and a weekend to burn, this is your game. Now, moving on, we have Menace. Okay, so you know Battle Brothers, right? That brutally difficult medieval tactical RPG where every decision matters and your guys die constantly. The same developers took that DNA and shot it into space. Menace launched in early access earlier this year, and it is exactly what you'd expect from these guys, which is to say it's punishing in the best way. You lead a strike force against a strange new threat in an isolated system. The turn-based combat is some of the best I've played in years. Your squad leaders are fully voiced, the mission variety keeps things fresh, and there are multiple enemy factions that actually behave differently. It's basically XCOM's alien threat mixed with Baldur's Gate 3's squad drama. You've got to decide which squad gets the rocket launcher and which one gets the flamethrower, because those choices actually matter on the battlefield. Early access price was $39.99 with a launch discount, and it's got over 600,000 Steam wishlists for a reason. If you like strategy games that demand your full attention and punish sloppy decisions, Menace is the real deal. And up next, let's talk about LEGO Batman: Legacy of the Dark Knight. I'm gonna be honest, I've been kind of lukewarm on LEGO games for a while. They're fine, they're fun, but they all kind of blend together after a certain point. This one actually surprised me. TT Games built on everything they did with LEGO Star Wars, the Skywalker saga, and it shows. The combat actually has some weight to it. You've got counters, acrobatic free-flow moves, shielded enemies you have to dodge behind, electric baton guys that are just annoying in that specific LEGO game way. But the real magic is how it treats Batman's entire history. Comics, animation, film, all of it. It's a love letter to the character that somehow works for both nostalgic adults and excited kids. The Arkham-style brawling mixed with LEGO comedy is a better combination than I expected. And couch co-op is an absolute triumph. If you've got someone to play with, this is the summer co-op game. So next up we have Mouse P.I. for Hire. This one got delayed for a month, and honestly, I'm glad they took the extra time. The final product is exceptionally well designed. You're playing as a 1930s cartoon mouse detective, and the entire game looks like an old black and white rubber hose animation come to life. It's a first-person shooter that basically plays like Doom with a jazz soundtrack. Now, the performance is absolutely top tier. Smooth. 120 frames per second on PC, runs great even on Steam Deck. The noir atmosphere is genuinely immersive. My only real complaint is that the noir storytelling and the boomer shooter action don't always mesh perfectly. You're blasting cartoon mice in the face and then trying to follow a detective mystery, and sometimes those two things feel like they're pulling in different directions. But the style is so unique, the gunplay is so satisfying, and the charm is so undeniable that I honestly didn't care. If you want something that looks and feels unlike anything else this year, this game is undeniably one of the perfect choice. Another one we have here is Cairn. From the Game Bakers, the people who made Fury and Haven, they decided to make a rock-climbing survival sim, which is probably the most left-field pivot I've seen from a studio in a while. And it works. Released earlier this year on PC and PS5, Cairn puts you on a mountain as expert climber Ava, and you have to get to the top. The climbing is limb by limb. You're grabbing holds, managing your stamina, finding the right routes. It feels unrefined at first because you've never climbed like this in a game before. But once it clicks, it's meditative in the same way Death Stranding was meditative, but more approachable. PC Gamer called it a brilliant climbing adventure that siphons the rage out of navigation puzzlers. The art direction is by Mathieu Bablé, and the soundtrack comes from composers who worked on Limbo, Inside, and Control. It's a game about grit and patience and humility. There's a lower difficulty mode if you just want to enjoy the climb without the punishing survival mechanics. But honestly, the challenge is the point. You feel every inch of progress. One of the most unique experiences of 2026 so far. And coming in next, we have Paralives. Alright, so you know The Sims, right? That life sim franchise that's been basically uncontested for like 20 years. Paralives is the first real competitor that actually has a shot. This one also hit early access and immediately sold more than 1 million copies on Steam in its first month of early access. The art style is this gorgeous comic book approach that makes details like wrinkles and eyelashes really pop. The building tools are incredibly flexible. There's a snap tool you can toggle on and off that lets you place objects basically anywhere. It's already sitting at 90 to 95% positive on Steam with over 12,000 reviews. But I have to be real with you, it is the very definition of early access. The UI is messy and unintuitive. Interactions regularly fail with no explanation. It's kind of buggy in that way that early access games always are. The devs have been upfront about it. They promised fixes and quality of life upgrades rolling out soon. The potential here is undoubtedly massive. If you're willing to deal with some jank in exchange for being part of something that could genuinely shake up the life sim genre, Paralives is worth your time. But maybe wait a month or two for some patches. Next on the list, it's Mewgenics. This is the weirdest game on this list by a pretty wide margin. From the Binding of Isaac creator, Mewgenics launched and immediately became one of the highest rated games of 2026, averaging a 90 on review aggregators. It's a tactical RPG where you breed and genetically manipulate an army of cats. That sentence alone should tell you whether you're interested. The turn-based combat is genuinely excellent. It's strategic, deep, worth sinking dozens of hours into. The roguelike loop keeps every run feeling fresh. You've got all this equipment that makes your cat stronger, but it breaks over time, so you're constantly managing resources. And the performance is also polished, runs perfectly on both PC and Steam Deck. Now, my only issue is that it kind of overstays its welcome. The breeding mechanics in combat are fantastic, but some of the other systems start to feel grating after a while. Still, this is one of those games where the ambition alone is worth celebrating. It's trying something genuinely weird and mostly pulling it off. If you like tactical RPGs and you like cats, this is basically your dream game. And up next, let's talk about Subnautica 2. Look, the original Subnautica is one of those games that everyone told me to play and I ignored for years. And then I finally played it and immediately understood why everyone wouldn't shut up about it. So I had high expectations for the sequel. It entered early access on May, and you know, it's in unusually good shape for an early access launch. Steam Deck verified, hardly any major bugs or performance issues. Supports up to 4 players with cross-platform play. New world, new creatures, new story. The big change is that there's way more dialogue and plot this time around, like a lot more. The original game had this beautiful quiet loneliness to it, and Subnautica 2 is much louder. Some people love it, some people miss the silence. I'm kind of in the middle. The underwater exploration is still terrifying in that specific Subnautica way where you're just swimming along and suddenly something massive appears out of the darkness. The improvements from the original are visible everywhere. Better graphics, smoother mechanics, more stuff to discover. If you loved the first game, you're going to love this. If you've never played Subnautica, maybe start with the original. But this is a damn good sequel. So next up we have Pragmata, Capcom's sci-fi action-adventure that nobody really knew what to expect from. It came out last April on PC, PS5, and Xbox Series X and S, and it's currently sitting at 97% positive reviews on Steam with an 86 Metascore. The combat gets intricate without being overwhelming. You start with a basic pistol and straightforward hacking, and by the end, you're switching through a huge arsenal of weapons and abilities. The hacking mechanic is the real star here. It's not a gimmick bolted on, it's a core part of how every encounter plays out. You can leave enemies defenseless before attacking, which opens up all kinds of strategic options. And visually, it's stunning. After all, it's a Capcom game, right? I played with ray tracing on medium-high settings, and it ran flawlessly. 0 crashes, 0 bugs, 0 performance issues. The story is kind of confusing in that Japanese sci-fi way where you're not entirely sure what's happening, but you're having a great time anyway. It's not a masterpiece. It sits just below Resident Evil Requiem in terms of critical reception, but it's absolutely one of the best action games of the year so far. If you like fast-paced combat but with a unique strategic twist and interesting mechanics and gorgeous visuals, Pragmata delivers. And next up we have Timberborn. This one's been in early access for years and it finally hit version 1.0 last March, and when I say it hit, I mean it hit. Over 25,000 concurrent players, 37,000 reviews at 95% positive. It's a city builder about lumberpunk beavers. Humans are gone, droughts and toxic waste are everywhere, and it's up to your beaver colonies to survive. You build dams, control rivers with dynamite, manage your resources, create thriving colonies. The water management is genuinely brilliant. You have to think about where the water flows, how to store it for dry seasons, how to use it to power your industry. The beavers have this rustic, charming aesthetic that makes everything feel cozy, even when you're dying of thirst. The balancing takes some getting used to. You need way more farmland and builders than you initially think, and some players have noted that everything you build looks very similar across playthroughs, but the core loop is addictive in that just one more season way that the best city builders nail. It's not as complex as some other games in the genre, but that's almost the point. It's accessible, charming, and deeply satisfying. So another one we have here is 007 First Light, IO Interactive. The people who made the Hitman trilogy are doing James Bond. It releases May 27th, and you know, I have been following this one closely because these developers doesn't miss. And that's true because the PC version is pretty solid. Shader compilation takes about 3 minutes on a mainstream system and largely eliminates stuttering. Optional ray tracing looks nice, but I think it isn't necessary at all. The Glacier engine is kind of showing its age a little compared to 2026 standards, but the game itself is shaping up to be one of the best games of the year. It's a reimagined origin story of a young James Bond. The game is incredibly cinematic, maybe one of the most cinematic game I've played in years. The missions I've played are tightly designed, the action is intense, and the Bond atmosphere is absolutely nailed. The PC performance isn't quite martini smooth, but it's a damn sight better than that stuttering reveal footage from earlier. If you've ever wanted to actually feel like James Bond in a video game, this is the one. The developer understands the assignment. And coming in next, we have Forza Horizon 6. After all the years of begging, Playground Games gave what fans are really asking for. It's set in Japan, which is exactly what everyone wanted. The game looks absolutely stunning. Ray tracing, major visual upgrades over the previous title. The overall performance of the game on PC is really solid. The system requirements are reasonable. Supports older hardware with 16 gigabytes of RAM and GPUs from 2019. Native rendering without upscaling gave averages of 123 frames per second with ray tracing disabled. Turn on ray tracing and performance takes a hit, but that's true of every game. The open world is massive, the car handling is as tight as ever, and the festival vibe is immaculate. The only real complaint I have is that it takes up 150 to 160 gigabytes of space, which is about 100 gigs more than should be socially acceptable for a racing game. But if you've got the storage, if you love the game, this is the best open world racing game on PC, period. The Japan setting gives it a freshness that Horizon 5 didn't quite have. Playground Games has done it again. So next up we have Slay the Spire 2. The original Slay the Spire basically invented the roguelike deck builder genre, or at least perfected it to the point where everyone else has been copying it ever since. So the sequel had impossible expectations. It entered early access on March, and the early reaction has been overwhelmingly positive. Does it radically rethink the original? No, but it builds on top of it in ways that reinvigorate the gameplay. New cards, new characters, new events, new enemies, new environments. 4-player co-op is a huge new addition, and it's a great test of how well you and your friends can work together. The balance is still rough in early access. Some things are overtuned, some are undertuned, but the framework is already incredible. Recent patches have overhauled the RNG system based on player feedback, which is exactly what you want from an early access game. The developers are clearly listening and iterating. It may not be the most ambitious sequel, but it's an excellent reinvigoration of a brilliant game. If you liked the first one, you're going to sink another 500 hours into this. Full release is probably a year or two away, but what's already here is absolutely worth playing. Next on the list, it's Resident Evil Requiem. It's now available on PC, as well as PS5, Xbox Series X and S, and Switch 2. This is Resident Evil 9, essentially, and Capcom absolutely nailed it. The PC version is one of the best PC ports of 2026. Strong graphical options menu, performs well, no shader compilation issues, great support for modern upscalers. It balances classic Resident Evil horror with action in a way that somehow works for everyone. The RE engine continues to be one of the best in the business. The game is visually stunning, runs flawlessly even on lower-end hardware. And here's the thing that really impressed me. It completes in about 10 hours. A tight, focused, no-padding Resident Evil game that respects your time. You're playing as Leon and a newcomer named Grace, turning items around until they reveal their secrets, shooting zombies in the head. It's classic Resident Evil gameplay with modern polish. The story finally moves on from the past in ways that feel fresh. Some reviewers are calling it perfect, which is rare for a franchise this old. If you've ever liked a Resident Evil game, you're going to love this one. It's undoubtedly one of the best games in the series have ever been. And finally, we have Crimson Desert. This is kind of the big one. Pearl Abyss, the studio behind Black Desert, took everything they learned from that MMO and built a cinematic single-player epic. It released on almost every platform and sold several million copies in its first weeks. The critical reception has been favorable across the board, and I have to say, this game is special. The open world is massive and beautiful. The combat is some of the most fluid action I've played in years. The story actually lands in a way that open-world games often fail to achieve. On PC, the performance is surprisingly good. Pearl Abyss's Black Space engine delivers impressive smoothness even on older hardware. Digital Foundry's analysis showed it's mostly GPU limited, and if you're on an 8GB card, just avoid the cinematic texture quality setting and stick to high. It basically looks the same. The game crashed for some people at launch, it was kind of a lottery, but patches have smoothed most of that out. The storage requirement is huge, but the hardware specs aren't scary. Only 16GB of RAM needed across the board. The sheer scale of this game is impressive. The boss fights are cinematic in the best way. The world feels alive in a way that most open worlds don't. It's not perfect, nothing is, but it's the best PC game of 2026 so far, and I don't think it's particularly close. If you haven't played Crimson Desert yet, what are you doing? Go play it. And that's all for today. Leave us a comment, let us know what you think. If you liked this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now is a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos from time to time, and the best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription. So click subscribe. Don't forget to enable notifications. And as always, thanks for watching.